Brian, stop the tape.
Okay, Mike. Oh, wait. Rewind that scene, please.
Rewind that scene.
Rewind that scene.
Rewind it.
Rewind that scene.
I'm Mike Rizzo.
And I'm Brian Bonds.
And together we are Bobo Touch Rewind That Scene podcast. Baby. We go back in time to our favorite 80s, 90s, and 2000s movies, mainly cult classics. And we talk about, new perspectives, new stories. We just dive into the making of, things like that,
Yeah. And, it's really exciting because we learn something new each episode about life, the making of the movie. There's some really great wisdom here. So even if you're not even a fan of the movie or haven't even seen it yet, it's worth checking it out.
Yeah, and typically the movies that we like to talk about are things that kind of rocked us growing up, right? Because, we're lifelong friends. And, I just think these are things that resonated with us, our favorite movies, things that kind of have an impact on us and social media, and just things that are just really, we love like the weird shit, right? Like we just love like the weird, obscure niche. The more obscure, the better. This one's very special for obvious reasons, right? The dragon.
Yes, the Bruce Lee story. I mean, Bruce Lee has had such a cultural impact on the world. I mean, on martial arts and cinema. I mean, being one of the first people in Hollywood that was just crushing it when it came to martial arts and all of the special techniques that he brought over to share and put into cinema. I mean, you could see it in the Green Hornet, to Enter the Dragon, to Game of Death. I mean, all these films. I mean, it's everybody loves Bruce Lee.
Yeah, and also this is a big deal because everyone knows, and even some of the newer listeners, that we were obsessed with Brandon Lee from The Crow, which was one of our first episodes on the podcast. This was a big deal. And also, like, Jason Scott Lee, like, I can't imagine him having to fill these shoes to play Bruce Lee. Like, and also this was like his starring role, right? It's like one of his big breakout roles, essentially. So I can't imagine the pressure and, like, essentially if I was in his shoes, I probably would shit myself having to play Bruce Lee. That's insane. Insane.
It's true.
But we love this movie, and we were dying to pick his brain about some of this. So
yeah, and I was really glad that, when we reached out to Jason, that he made time to do this. It's important to make time. And I think
exactly,
and we never know who's going to say yes, and so it's really awesome. And just to hear how he learned and built this relationship with Linda Lee Cadwell and the family and folks who knew Bruce's ways of just basically his art and how to translate that on screen. I mean, it's really cool.
Well, it's also cool. He told us that he's in Hawaii, so he can only do the interview like in the next 10 minutes. But I have this pottery class, so Bonds, I got to run. Okay.
That's weird. Anyway, without further ado, I'm really excited to chat by myself with Jason Scott Lee to talk about Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Jason, come on. Jason Scott Lee, thank you so much for making time today. Growing up, watching the movies that you've starred in really meant a lot to us, and Dragon, obviously, the Bruce Lee story being one of them, and wanted to know how you got that role. What were your just sort of initial thoughts when you first got the part and the script and in those early days?
Yeah, I mean, to go way back, I was actually raised in Honolulu in Hawaii. I was born in LA, but at a very young age. I think I was 2 years old. My family, my father and my mother, both being from Hawaii, brought us back to the islands, and I was raised there. So raised a real island boy kind of upbringing, and found my way back to LA. Found myself in an acting workshop, acting classes, and started pursuing acting. I remember going into an audition for this film that Michael Mann was directing called Last of the Mohicans. I met a casting director there, Bonnie Timmerman, and she was very nice. I didn't get the role. All of a sudden, there was this call for this film, Dragon. Director of that film, Rob Cohen, called Bonnie Timmerman, says, I need to cast this role. It seems to be a very difficult role to cast. Do you know of anyone that has crossed your path that would be right for it? You think would be right for it? And she mentioned my name because I had just come in to read for Last of the Mohicans. And so Rob called me in, didn't tell me what the project was about. So I had no clue. I just thought dragons, whatever. and sat me down. There was a host of ladies who were executives from Universal Studios, and said, "Oh, this is the Bruce Lee story, and we're interested that you could be right for it." And I was shocked, and my jaw was hanging open because it was kind of a blind audition. They wanted to keep it under wraps. I wasn't even an audition; it was just a meet and greet.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Well, we're going to have to do a audition, and it's going to be a screen test. We'd like you to take the script home with you, take a read, and tell us what you think." And I went home, and a week went by, and I kept thinking about it because I had gone to all of Bruce Lee's movies as a kid. My father was a big fan, and we used to go to Bruce Lee films in Honolulu. And it was always a special occasion, and it was always mind blowing because he kind of just jumped off the screen, and it was like bigger than life. And I thought, oh my God, like this is like a legendary, performance and legendary, iconic figure. I said, I don't know, man. It's like I'm kind of scared shitless. I'm not, I didn't study martial arts my entire life. I did a little this, little that, but nothing very serious. And Rob Cohen, the director, called me back and said, "Hey, Jason, how's it going? Have you read the script?" I said, honestly, Rob, I'm kind of nervous about it. I haven't read it because if I read it and I like it, then I'm in trouble, man. It's like, and he says, no, don't worry. We got you covered, and, we'll support you. And I said, okay, well, and then eventually I got around to reading it like maybe like 3 weeks later. And he kept calling me, and I kept, saying, I don't know. And he goes, just because you're answering that way, we think you might be the guy. And I went, why is that? He goes, because anybody in their right mind would be jumping at this role. And I said, I said, I have to be realistic. I don't have a martial arts background. I said, I was a gymnast. I was very athletic in my young. I said, this is kind of like asking someone who never danced to play the part of Rudolf Nureyev,
Yeah.
And he said, "No, don't worry. We'll give you enough time. We just need you to read the script and let us know if you like it, and let us know if we want to. Let's go ahead and do a screen test." And I said, "Okay." I read it. I said, "Great, fantastic." I said, "I love the emotional arc and everything about the character." And I said, "Man," I said, "but I am sure I'm like not sure." And so he started running me down the line with the different people who were interested in meeting the guy who was going to screen test. I trained a little bit for the screen test. I trained with a stunt choreographer guy named Steve Lambert for a short bit. And then we finished the screen test and we got a green light. The studio said, "Okay, go ahead and make it." So then, I kind of got serious because I was like, okay, I'm still, when you're a novice, when you don't have anything figured out. And, acting was one thing, but athletics and the physicality and the energy dynamics of an individual like that is something else. We went, down the road, and I found one Sifu or teacher from Bruce's lineage that was still teaching and was still and wanted to get involved with me and share some of his knowledge. And I was so grateful that Jerry Poteet was open and his wife Fran Joseph was open to training me.
Wow.
That started the journey. And I recognized that doing the part or any kind of achievement in the role, emotional or otherwise, was directly related to the training. Because the training made you feel the way and the things I saw on screen about him and how he came off and the confidence level that he had and just the finesse and the expertise that you saw, that perfection almost in like poetry in motion, that all came from the hard, diligent, disciplined work that he laid down. It was something that was really hard to achieve in a short amount of time. But I think through, little camera angles and some camera tricks and stuff and hard work on my part, we were able to capture a little bit of what the essence of the man.
I mean, I think so. There's so many great scenes, like, of course, like the fight with the sailors in the beginning, I think is a lot of fun. And with scenes like that, and even the back of the building kitchen scene, what was the blocking and choreography like? I loved like the shots where the camera's on like low to the ground and you're jumping.
Well, we had a wonderful cinematographer, David Egby, and he was like hands-on. And I think he really understood sort of the physicality of it. And this is when cameras are big and heavy. This is the 90s, and the smaller digital stuff wasn't even around. And it just made it that much more interesting because you really, when you worked in tight spaces, you were really tight. The choreography, we had assistants from John Chung from Hong Kong, who had worked with Jackie Chan and things. I would say the choreography for the whole film was kind of a combination between
Nice.
what Jerry Poteet and Fran Joseph brought from the Bruce Lee world and what John Chung brought from the Hong Kong side. So it was kind of a hybrid. There was a great deal of my thinking that and my wanting to make it just a Bruce Lee, timing and distance and kind of thing, fighting style. I think the popularity of Hong Kong kung fu movies at the time or action movies brought in that element of fun, kind of like tongue in cheek a little bit, hyper realistic type of essence in the fights. And I think that I look back and I thought, oh, that was an interesting choice that Rob Cohen made. He kind of straddled the line there because, a lot of Bruce's stuff was going in the direction of less is more. Not the fight, not like you see a lot of action movies now that is still the same. It's like the fight goes on and on and on and on and on. It's like, instead of creating scenarios where, you see a street fight and it's 1, 2, 3 hits and the guy's like, decked, one person, if you have a skilled fighter, the other guy, if he's a skilled fighter, there's something that's going to happen within that seconds. Yeah, entertainment. We kind of straddle the line on both sides. But and then it was, at the time, the diet were the things you could get, and we did it all natural. There was no thought of like enhancement or anything. So just the basic like boiled or steamed chicken breast and just steamed broccoli, no sugar, no salt, no oil.
Yeah.
And just training, training.
That's awesome. Even what you kind of were mentioning earlier, there's also this emotional depth, right, between Lauren Holly's character as Linda Lee and also even the scene with your father, Rick Young, like that whole, there's some great family moments. Even the scene when the mom comes to visit and you're in the wheelchair, and it's really interesting to see that side too. And, what was it like working with her as Bruce's career is kind of going bigger and bigger in the storyline?
Lauren Holly came in with guns a-blazing, and she was just fantastic. And we got along, and it was a pleasure. There was never any kind of like riff or anything or any, problematic things. So it made it really like a really fun experience. And always having that thing, that interracial dynamic,
Yeah.
which was so Bruce, it was like so him stepping out into new territory and in his own personal life. And constantly like facing challenges in all those ways and all those angles socially and even with the arts of the martial arts and with being in the US and being ethnic and having an accent. And I think so many of the challenges I think that immigrants face even nowadays, it's just, and I think there was a certain exception to the rule with him because of his skill set, because of his artistry. There was something very excellent about him.
Yeah, it's a good point. There are definitely elements that, obviously that still ring throughout time that I think that the film captures that interracial side, which I think really taught us even a lot as kids. I think seeing that is really important. Obviously growing up in places where I'm from, like in New York, there's so many different cultures here. The history of Hollywood and what was accepted and how things have changed over time and how they have not. I think that's one really cool part about this film. It feels just very real.
Yeah, I think there was a nice dynamic between us, and that was all throughout the shoot. And it's not often you have that connection, with players in your film.
What would you say is one of like your favorite or like most memorable scenes shooting? Obviously, I love it seeing you in like the Green Hornet scene is awesome, and then of course there's so many great fight scenes, the ice blades and all that stuff.
I think that's an easy one. It was the fight scene in the dance with the sailors. I think most memorable because this was behind the scenes. There's that scene where the guy grabs me by the jacket, and then I jump up and I put my feet on his chest and I push off, and the seam on the back of the jacket rips and I fall down backwards. The Hong Kong stunt team was supposed to, because of the shot and the way it was like full figure, at a certain point when I got up onto the sailor's chest, a mattress pad or some kind of padding had to be put up under me. So when I kicked off and I fell backwards, I would land on the padded. And it was like a good like 4-inch, 5-inch pad. So when we did it, we said, okay, we tested it. We did like some rehearsals and stuff. And then when it went down on the take, the guys were late. And so I pushed off the thing and the seam ripped and then my body went back and it just made this massive like kaboom. It sounded like a bomb went off because it was concrete floor. And I was dropping onto my back like from maybe 6-7 feet. Because when you push, you like, and it just made this huge noise. And I thought I broke my back for sure. I landed and then I just froze because the sound was so loud and such a boom, and I went, oh shit. I just froze. I was like, let me start moving stuff. I moved my right arm, moved my left arm, I moved my neck, and I went, okay, there was no pain there. And I started moving about. It's like, oh my God, there's no pain. And I got up and I was just fuming mad. I was like, who, I started getting into people whose timing was off. And it's just horrible. It was just frightening because that was like in the middle of like shooting schedule. And if anything had happened, I'd be like, oh man, that's it, right? You're pretty much done if you do the rest of it in the wheelchair. like the scenes. Just do the wheelchair scenes. Yeah. Come back to this next year.
That's a story, and there's such good energy in that scene, obviously with like you laying them all out. The demon scene that's at the end of the movie, was that difficult to shoot just with like the rain and aspect and just kind of where it was in the story?
Oh, it was like, yeah, because also we were utilizing all that fake blood and stuff. So
that's right.
When it rains like that, it gets, in your face and like your eyes and then like in your mouth and just really tricky with the nunchucks. It's always like the timing on the nunchucks is always an issue. It's sometimes, your timing's wicked on and sometimes it's like slippery and off. And not only is handling of a weapon in something in being wet, but it's also your footwork, how firm or how slippery the ground is. So rain always puts a hamper on it. And because rain doesn't really read on camera that well, they have to put a lot of it on for it to read on film. I remember doing that one, it was pretty cold too, I think.
Impressive stuff. And when the movie came out and looking even back on that, what was that experience like? Was any of Bruce's family or students able to catch the film as well?
I believe Shannon was around to see it, and I know Linda. By that time, by the premiere, Brandon Lee, his son, had already passed.
Gotcha.
So it was just Linda, Bruce's widow, and his daughter, I think, were around. Then it was a kind of an odd timing too. I was filming this film down in Easter Island called Rapa Nui, and with Kevin Costner's company. And they flew me from that little island, which I had been there for like months, right into the heart of LA. And it was like all of this kind of hoopla. It's hard to describe the contrast between an island that is one of the most remote places in the planet Earth to like the middle of LA for a premiere of a film that I was starring in. And it was like kind of a dream sequence. It was really rather bizarre. From like being in somewhat isolated nature to be completely like in front of the cameras and paparazzi and all this kind of thing was really, really, really surprising. I didn't even really mentally prepare for it because I was kind of on to the next project, and that was kind of hard. I mean, that kind of shook me. I was like, oh, I said, people seem to be very excited about this film. Yeah. And I was excited about the accomplishment of it. But, I think as an actor, when it's in the can, you feel like, yeah, that felt good. That felt like I accomplished something.
What are you currently working on now? Have you been still working within film and TV?
Yeah, I came off of a TV series that was on Disney Plus a little while ago, a year ago or so. And then I had a little stint on the new Lilo and Stitch live action. I just kind of joined the party for a little bit, for a little cameo. On the homestead now, just kind of taking care of life and enjoying the family. So, yeah. And we, you know how it goes, the actor's life. It's just kind of up and down, and it's when you're working, you're working. When you're not, you hopefully have a good life.
Anything else that you want to share, feel free to do so.
Oh, and no, it's just the experience of being on. That was a very special experience, being a part of Bruce's legacy, little way. Just to be able to engage sincerely with Linda Lee and hear her heartfelt thanks and working with her on the project, and then seeing her in the years past. I mean, what's it going on? 30 years
Yeah.
since. So, and and I've seen her on different occasions at different events. The passing of my sifu, Jerry Poteet, she was there. Just been able to keep that connection. And I still keep in contact with some, Jeet Kune Do people. And just to see, like now that there's YouTube and things, I get to see Bruce's effect on the fighting arts and MMA and all these things. And when I was being trained for the Bruce Lee movie, we had to engage a lot with a lot of his techniques and his principles and his philosophy for that role, and it really changed my life. And it affected so many parts of my personal growth. Really kind of altered my vision for things. Put a lot of insight and gave me a lot of philosophy to work with in going after the things I felt worthy in my lifetime going after.
Yeah, especially over, as you said, there's been about 30 years. There's been, obviously different books, projects, shows that come out, right? But I think this film is the film. It's a great, really resource for people to learn. I think about this journey, and it's a great biopic on Bruce, and I think the ending is awesome as well. It's awesome that you had such a positive experience.
Yeah, I knew from the outset it wasn't going to be in the sense of documentary, and I wasn't going to be Bruce Lee. But that said, there was this thing inside me that told me if I can just offer an impression that people feel a connection to the man, I feel like I'd have done my job. That's kind of like what I was going for as an actor, because I always felt like Bruce Lee could fly. And there's one thing that Jerry used to tell me, my sifu, and he said, Bruce used to always say, I want to take my body where my mind can go. And he says, what are you talking about? He says, well, can your mind move at the speed of light? And so that was the talk. That was the kind of philosophy. Like, that's why he coined that thing, use no limitation as limitation. So that was the philosophy wrapped up in where his mind wanted to go. And just things that created, I think, when you start pondering on that kind of philosophy, it gives you this lightness of being. And I think during that time period, I think I grasped onto that kind of thing. And there was this sensibility, that like floatiness, a very kind of lightness that I witnessed in my portrayal on the screen. So I thought if that was an impression, gave people an impression of Bruce, I think that would be as close to it. And I think I always try to look for certain things like that when I see portrayals of Bruce. There is a sense of groundedness, this sense of centeredness, but also that lightness, that kind of like, how do you say it? Je ne sais quoi. It's just like a style, yeah?
Yeah. No, totally. It's convincing because it's not like you just went in front of a camera and just half-assed it. You really, I think, are so convincing in this. There are very flying-like scenes even in this film. I love it when just the camera's going all over. It's cool that you had a great sort of takeaway from making it as well.
Yeah, very positive all the way around. I stayed with Jerry. I took like a 2-year hiatus after the project from martial arts and from the whole kind of like, I think I was maybe immersing myself too much so, and then I came back to Jerry and I ended up training with him off and on for the next 15 plus years.
Wow.
It really enraptured my world, for a period of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
I always told Rob Cohen, I said, I just want to do the man justice because he gave so much of that passion and that drive and that desire to be something exceptional. So, to do the man justice and get some fraction of it correct. Because the man is far exceeding the myth.
Whoa! Oh man, that was awesome.
Whoa.
Hey, Riz.
How'd it go?
How was the
Oh,
pottery
it's good.
class?
Yo, it's an hour and a half right over here in Bay Ridge. It's a new shop. It's called Wang Wang. It's really good.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a really good place. So I'm sorry, Jason, that I missed it. I feel horrible, but this is the first class. How'd it go?
It was great. Jason is such an amazing person, and I mean, just to hear about that process. I mean, really, like even just how he was shooting for Last of the Mohegans and found out, or testing, to be in that film, and then from another caster. I mean, to even then just say, "Oh, I'm going to try and be Bruce Lee," and Rob Cohen really believed in him and knew he could do it, and I think Jason delivered. And
I love how they were like, you're the guy because we know you're so nervous, or like he put it off a little bit, right? Like he was like, he didn't get back to them right away about like saying yes to the role, and they're like, that's why we want you, exactly because of your apprehension.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I mean, they're like, hey, did you read the script?
Yeah.
And I love it, and I love also Jason's story about when the film came out. It was kind of, he was already working on something else and came back to California and so on, and so it's really interesting. And there's some great books that this movie is based on, and I really think there's a lot that if you're really into Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee, to go in there and check them out. We can link to them on our site. But I feel this movie really did a great job at just covering the overall story. And since then there's been Grit and real truthful other reimaginings that have come in out, but this movie was really the first feature film in Hollywood that got like a theatrical release.
Yep. Yeah, it's just great, man. Be like water, baby Bond. Be like water.
It's true.
What a great movie.
True.
And for all you who are new, check us out on social media at Bobo Touch. We do films, comedy, sketches. We also do music. And we're just having great fun here. So thank you for everyone for listening, and spread the word to all martial arts enthusiasts and moviegoers alike. We love you guys. And just some really beautiful montages in this movie too. So
it's true.
I love a good montage always.
It's true. If you don't know much about the history here, go back and check it out.
Please do.
And if you haven't seen the movie, check it out. Check out Bruce Lee's films, books.
Yep.
Shannon Lee has a podcast out as well, his daughter.
Check her out. Really good stuff.
And just want to plug in also as well the new 4K version of The Crow, 1994.
Yes. Also check that out.
Starring Brandon Lee. Yeah.
And don't watch the new Crow.
Again.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks again. Bye.
Bobo Touch.